Thank you.
It's a publisher. It's a publisher.
Something million. He said, if we give him that money, he will run mad. So we want him to cool down. We want him to cool down. The man said, don't mind them. Let them.
Oh, are you? Good to see you. I haven't not seen you for a long time. You're now living in the village.
Are you still in Bali?
Oh, very else could that be? You know, I came for 2 years. And then I here to go. You have a future for president. She's not.
Hello, man.
Ahmed. I was a lieutenant commander Omar. The psychiatrist, you know, the doctor. He writes many books.
Yes, I know.
Doesn't it? How many hours have you lost? Oh, you're not flying, you're the ground.
He's been in the country for 51 years, is it?
51 years.
Then he's okay, no wonder you have a boy.
So you are a citizen. Welcome, sir.
Without going to the village.
Yes.
Okay.
You can sit behind me so that if we have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
When they talk,
Yeah, just
give you responsibility.
and every time that happens. Just
We will discuss. We will discuss. Okay, well done. Thank you. But you know, of course, you know what that says.
yes.
So something is happening.
You disappear now.
I didn't disappear.
Before you know you are in WHO, next time you are in this, you are in that, and also. For you engage them for this purpose. Out.
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And then you are just coming from Abuja.
Yes, I think 7 o'clock. The lady, it was 7 o'clock. Because I wanted to go.
Yes.
Well, now you, it's you, so this time around, it's you now. Look like the government now. Oh, look like the government now.
Chairman.
Welcome, sir. How are you, sir?
Paul is my name.
Ahmed is my name, sir.
Welcome.
Please do the photo.
The photo.
Has he done it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, this one is too, it's like this movie.
Welcome to Realnews Anniversary Lecture.
Thank you. Hello.
How are you going to get in the United States? Don't give me.
This is a native name. So I said, how do I come with those names? Until my father told me how.
You came about.
Then later part, I started reading about the man, and then I read another Martin Luther. Oh, it's my pleasure.
How do you try to oh yeah, Prince of the Calicut. Prince of the Calicut. Oh, okay. The title of the movie. Have you written anything? Good. Next year. Next year.
Good memory.
Yes.
Thank you.
To be part of this history, this is the 5th one. It is good, it is something you do once and twice or 3 times. It must be good that is why you are doing it again. Let me go ahead since the VIPs are coming, you are the VVIPs. While our guest lecturer is coming in, I would like first of all to introduce all of us on this table, the higher table. This one is a high table, but this is the highest of the high.
But are you going to be up?
Yeah.
Welcome. Let's go, man.
All right.
Good morning, ma'am. What are you doing? The last time we stopped was in intro of the lounge. We had breakfast together.
Okay.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
A patriotic Nigerian Pan-Africanist. She is here. We are happy to have her as our first female guest lecturer for the Realnews magazine. Let me just begin by mentioning some of us that are here who, like I said, I want to start, since we are known in Africa for our being very friendly people. So please, Professor Akpan Hogan Epo, the Director of Management, Lagos. So Professor Epo, if he's here, Prof, directing from him. My job will soon be done, so you won't. Then let us also welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ahmed Pugu, the Managing Director of Asset Management Company of Nigeria, AMCOM. My brother Mohammed, this is your place. Please, another hand for him. He's a very shy person. And following is Mr. No, it's not Mr. now. So, his engineer, Siki Aliyu, who is representing Dr. Maikati Baru, the Managing Director of Nigerian NNPC. You're welcome, sir. Aliyu is of Netcom, engineering arm of NNPC. You're welcome, sir. And following, we have the Executive Director of Bank of Industries. Who are we talking about? Mr. Wahid Olatunji. You're welcome. Thank you. Well, this table is not gender sensitive, but what can we do? The good thing is that our sister, our guest lecturer, a daughter of Africa, a Pan-Africanist, and a patriotic Nigerian, is capable of handling any situation. So don't be surprised that he's there. You're welcome, madam. She is our guest lecturer. We'll get to introduce her later. But so that they also know that on this side of the higher table that there are eminent persons here seated that have been waiting. Let me begin by, I was talking about the African, generosity and friendship. Let me begin by welcoming Chief Jupe Bakut, OON. So if you could just show himself. He is one of us. He stayed here for so many years that he has become Nigerian. So another hand for Chief Bakut. And is it surprising that next to him, to his right, is our own Martin Luther? Well, Americans, they have their own, we have our own here. But it's not a Martin Luther King, it's a Martin Luther Aguirre, General Aguirre. And former Army Chief, former Chief of Defense Staff, former everything. He had worked for the UN in Darfur. He is now a visiting professor at King's College in London. So, our own Martin Luther, you're welcome. Thank you very much. And next to him, I won't do this alone. So please permit me to welcome my brother, Sir Emechete. And I was asking Maureen, why did you bring me with somebody who is knighted? I'm not a knight, and I'm a day. So please help us get to know some of those who are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Port News online show. I am Sir Elvis, like my co-MC has just formally introduced me. I'll be anchoring today's event today. And I'll plead again to be very, very clear with us. Most of our guests on their way, there's a serious traffic gridlock around Ikeja. I was personally under traffic for 2.5 hours. Whatever happened, we'll race through, we'll catch up somewhere along the line. And then, we'll have a great day. You won't miss out anything. The rest assured that the publisher of online had done a very good job in bringing Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. Today will be very, very combustible. Now you know why we call her, I don't know, Madam. Welcome. I would also like to extend my praise to the high table. Thank you so much, all of you. But we'll have to keep on recognizing our VIPs before we launch before we finally hand over to the chairman to take control. But I think before then, since the high table is already constituted, we will quickly do something. So these are the list of people already seated. Cindy Foster is the MD of Nylon. Cindy, can we recognize you, please? Thank you, Cindy. Ade Otukomaya. Welcome. Ade is the rep of MD of Stanbic IBTC Bank. Nkechi Ale Balogun. Principal Consultant. Thank you. Welcome, Nkechi. We have Marshall Gondo. I was surprised to see Marshall here. You're taking more Marshall. Okay, welcome, madam. Prepared Adewumi. Oh, welcome, madam Adewumi. He is one representing the Chief of Air Staff. Welcome, sir. We also have Mr. Augustine Adewumi. Senior representing the governor of Delta State. Can we recognize him, please? Okay, thank you so much. Co-opera, President Eco International. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Okay. We keep on recognizing our very distinguished guests as we get rolling. Now, we're going to call up, since we have the high table already constituted, so that we don't waste time when we get into the event. Okay. Yeah. We will do what we usually do in Nigeria: national anthem, and then the opening prayers. Once we're done, we'll hand over to the chairman of this occasion. Thank you.
Well, let's start with the opening prayer. And it's been offered. Okay. Okay, please, I'm so sorry. National anthem. I thought it wasn't there. Please let's resume our seats. Opening prayer by Engineer Matthew Adodo. If she's here, he's here. Yeah, I know.
Please let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for this event. Father, we welcome your presence here among us. We say you direct all activities this day in the mighty name of Jesus. With all that we shall be hearing this day be enriching. May it impact in us positively in the mighty name of Jesus. We thank you and we pray that at the end of this activity, the organizers shall have the cause to say thank you and appreciate you in the mighty name of Jesus. This we pray of you in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we still are not taken to the guard room after this place because there is a group captain I.O. Adewumi who came here very quickly recognized, and there is also okay, I think that is all. No, there's Commodore. That's where I'm going because I don't want to do. There are forces of the air, the water and the land. If you don't do that, you are in trouble. Commodore I.J. Umar is representing the Chief of Naval Staff. Please. So now that we have covered all the arms, we go also. Maureen did not drop from his car, and I know if I don't recognize his her bosses, those who make sure that she's now climbing and continues to climb. I think they will also take offense. So please let us welcome and recognize all the former bosses of Maureen Chibo, beginning Dan Abese, Soji, Akiri Ade, they are here, Ray Eku. These are executive directors now of Lay 5 Limited, who they are here, and they were with Newswatch and all that. And Yakubu Mohammed, you know the foursome, yeah. So because you will be, I don't want to appear somewhere mentioned that the MC messed up this occasion. So I think I paid my dues. Oh, the NAN, well, NAN, well, I'm part of it, so I don't want to give you my story because it's not about me. But you all know Maureen, why you are here. That is somebody, if you want something, better give it to her, otherwise she will not leave you alone. And on that note, let me hand over to the chairman. So he will now take over. Chairman is you want me to continue?
Welcome address.
Okay. So, if that is the case, he's giving me, I wanted permission. This is not, it is now welcome address by Maureen Chibo. I've told you a little bit about this lady and how she's been able to single-handedly do a lot of things that men cannot do. And that's why she's seeking out for those women too that are in her class, models that, and our guest today, lecturer, happens to be one of them. Maureen, the editor, I like to say editor, she puts publisher before editor. But let me say editor, publisher of Realnews magazine, online, Pioneer Nigerian Weekly Investigative Online. She has gone, she's an, a go-getter. She does, she's an epitome of professionalism in journalism. She has traversed defense ministry, defense industry, oil industry, economic, banking, and she's a laureate. She's won so many awards in all these areas. We'll get to know her, and Wahid was reminding me about NAN. Well, that was where she started after her education as a correspondent, and then she's covered everything that is coverable in that economic desk. From the economic desk, she went to the defense, and winning, Merit Award for Print Journalism of the Year 2003, Investigative Journalism of the Year, Political Reporter, Defense Reporter, so Business Reporter. These are Maureen that I'm talking about. Capital Market Reporter of the Year, Diamond Award for Media Excellence in Reporting, and what else? Maureen is, like we said, she studied at Anambra State University of Technology and then University of Lagos, or Bakoka. And then for where she bagged her bachelor's and master's degree in communication and economics. She's been turned a professional journalist that nobody can ignore. And then before she set up this outfit that is now marking its 5th year and having the 5th anniversary, she's somebody that when she wants something, like a lady in the Bible that about that judge that could not even respect man or God, but he says, listen, I am going to give this woman what she wants before she kills me. Maureen doesn't kill, but she will remind you about what she wants in the morning, 5 minutes to 12, after 5 minutes after 12, and then 3 o'clock, then 6 o'clock, and then before you go to bed. And in the morning, she will be the first to also wake you up. So please give it up for the person who knows how to get everything that she wants. And that's the reason she has brought everybody here. In fact, if you don't come, then you have the guilty conscience of saying, what have I done or haven't I done today? Maureen, everybody knows you for doing the right thing. What are you telling us? We are here for the 5th anniversary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. when I was in this agency of Nigeria, where I actually started my journalism profession. Good morning, dear honored guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and members of my constituency, the media. Permit me, please, to stand on existing protocol. It is with great pleasure and honor that I welcome you all to the 5th anniversary lecture of Realnews magazine. We acknowledge and appreciate your sacrifice to be here at a time when you should be preparing for the end of the year activities. Thank you for gracing this important occasion. I am elated that Professor Oby, our chairman for this occasion, and other distinguished guests are here. It is an understatement for me and to say that I am overjoyed that our guest lecturer is also here. Dr. Mrs. Oby Ezekwesili, Senior Economic Advisor, African Economic Development Policy Initiative, former Vice President, World Bank for Africa, former Minister of Education, Federal Republic of Nigeria, convener of the Bring Back Our Girls initiative, and currently a global democracy ambassador. She does not need any introduction. We appreciate the honor you have all done by accepting our invitation and for supporting Realnews over the years. We have no doubt that our guest lecturer will do justice to the topic of this 5th anniversary lecture, African Leadership in a Turbulent Era. My special welcome also goes to Mr. Ahmed Kuru, who has to fly in from Abuja this morning, despite his busy schedule. Mr. Mekanti Barrow, Group Managing Director of Nigerian National NNPC, who was to be here, but yesterday he has to jet off to London on an emergency assignment. But he's ably represented here today by Engineer Siki Ali. He's the Managing Director of NETCO, the engineering arm of NNPC. So you are welcome. Mr. Mohid Olabintu has always been there for me. You are welcome, sir. Allow me to appreciate and welcome all members of Realnews Hall of Fame, made up of our former guest, Professor Morisu, former INEC Chairman, Dr. Ibi Mohammed Chambers, United Nations Secretary General, Special Representative, and Head of UN Office in West Africa and Sahel, Professor Charles Soludo, former Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, and other discussants, Mr. Robert Oya, former Managing Director, Nexim, Mr. Benjamin Dickey, former Managing Director, Bureau of Public Enterprises, and Professor J.I. Ezigbo, Managing Director, Falcon Nigeria Limited, and Malan Mohammed Hayatuddin, founder, Alpine Investments Limited, and Dr. Ngozani Ibnam. They are all members. They've all they were all speakers in previous Realnews magazine's lecture. And the Realnews Hall of Fame is our own modest way of honoring our lecturers and speakers at our anniversary lecture for their contribution to knowledge and national development. And we will be also inducting our distinguished speakers in this occasion shortly after the lecture. This anniversary lecture is one way Realnews is contributing to the development of our nation by providing a forum for frank discussion by professionals, scholars, technocrats, and influential personalities on the way forward for our great nation, Nigeria, as the hope of Africa. In 2014, we focused on general elections. In 2015, the theme was on the economy, and last year, the discussion was on security. This year, we are deliberately focusing on leadership. Our choice of 2017 topic has been informed by contemporary global events, especially the emergence of Mr. Donald Trump as America's 45th president, with Russia and China increasingly wielding more influence in Africa. There is also the looming threat of nuclear war in the Korean Peninsula. This is coming at a time when African countries are struggling with ceaseless political and socio-economic turbulence, high youth unemployment with hundreds, if not thousands of young Africans perishing in the Mediterranean Sea on a perilous journey to Europe in search of the so-called greener pasture. Just last week, some 26 Nigerian women, young women at that, between the ages of 14 and 18, died in the Mediterranean Sea. From South Sudan, where warlords appeared bent on disintegrating the country, to the lingering Boko Haram insurgency in West and Central Africa, coupled with a rash of uprising by separatist groups, including the Niger Delta militants and the indigenous people of Biafra in Nigeria, in addition to the increasing wave of terrorism in other parts of Africa. The prognosis looks bleak, to say the least. Millions of African children are at the receiving end of the socio-economic, political, security, and developmental challenges, with many now victims of serial abuse and violence, human trafficking, malnutrition, and avoidable deaths, while others are deprived of quality education and viable future. We are fortunate today to have as our guest lecturer an international figure who has advised many African governments on leadership and developmental issues. I wish to appeal to my journalist colleagues to ensure that the message from here today is heard across the nation and beyond. Of course, at Real News, we will ensure that we do our part by giving the widest publicity to this important lecture. Our objective is to use our investigative skills to dig out information in sectors we focus on, produce an unbiased report that will influence governments and decision makers to take actions that will make the society better. Real News boasts of a crop of seasoned journalists who believe strongly in the tenets of and ethics of the profession. We are convinced that journalism as the fourth estate of the realm can contribute towards building a free, fair, and just society where fundamental human rights are respected and citizens have the freedom to pursue their interests without let or hindrance. Our motto is for God and humanity. Our vision is to build a reputable world-class media institution with professionalism and integrity as the bedrock of the four cardinal points of our mission. The first is to ensure Real News becomes the cornerstone of investigative journalism in Nigeria and Africa. The second is to publish a credible and influential magazine that will galvanize the public and small government and decision makers into actions that will change the political, socio-economic landscape and society in general for the better. Third is to focus on oil and gas and environment, vulnerable groups, youth, women, and children, and give voice to the silent majority and minority groups. Our fourth mission is to ensure that Real News magazine fights any form of injustice and ensure that no section of the Nigerian society is neglected, discriminated against, or left behind in our quest to build a better and just world where basic human rights are respected and cherished. In the past 5 years, we have kept faith with our mission and vision statements. We have investigated and published exclusive stories that cover all sectors of our focus, including politics, oil and gas, business and economy, women and youth. We can proudly say that we have done our job with a high sense of responsibility. In 2013, 2016, and 2017, Real News provided special coverage of the African Development Bank annual meetings in Marrakesh, Morocco, Zambia, and India, with support from the bank and the Bank of Industry, inclusive coverage of the events for the teaming visitors to our website. The success we have recorded in Real News has come with its share of challenges, especially fashioning creative ways for sustainable publication in a difficult economic environment with dwindling prospects for advertisement. I would like to invite everyone here, especially those who are not already on our mail list, to visit our website and subscribe to our e-newsletter to enjoy investigative reports on topical developments issues rendered in professional style. But if our magazine, which we work so hard to produce, is free, how then do we make our money to remain in business? Our special appeal, therefore, goes to everyone here, whether from the public or private sector and the civil society, to please support Real News to remain in business. The support can come in form of advertisement, special supplements, special features on the company organization for publication on our website. We also welcome capacity building programs for our staff to serve our clients better. In this regard, I wish to thank Chevron Nigeria for providing professional training to 2 of our staff recently. Realnews is also into media consultancy, writing of books and biography. We have several manuscripts we are working on. These are some of the ways we raise money for our free source online publication with investigative journalism as our first love. We also welcome whistleblowers in the world of Realnews magazine. Rest assured that when you give us sensitive information, we will handle it with all sense of responsibility and confidentiality. Always keep in mind that Realnews magazine is all about investigative, robust, and excellent journalism. We are your partners in development, and together we will build a strong and virile nation where all will be free and happy to live and invest in. Our sincere gratitude goes to our partners, Chevron Mobile and advertisers, for supporting the organization of this lecture. Once again, I wish to welcome you all warmly and thank you for your attention. God bless you all. God bless Realnews. God bless our dear country, Nigeria, and our mother continent, Africa. Thank you.
Dr. Ting, she deserves a bigger round of applause. Thank you. Okay, we're still on repetition to move. Well, we have Miss Basharoom J.K. Randall, OFR, FCA, Chairman and CEO of J.K. Randall, Chartered Accountant. Round of applause for Basharoom. We have my good old friend, I took everything for granted for friendship. The engineer Barry Simone. Barry and I were contemporaries at UNM, together with the lead speaker of today. We all went into UNM the same day. Barry, you're very much welcome. All right, and here we have a representative of Chevron Solar, Adebayo, Manager Communication. A round of applause, please. What Mama has just done is do small justice to our own remarks. But I will turn it the other way. And that is exactly what the people I will call the Troika did in the same hall here 3 years ago. Who are these Troika? People who consider as the father of modern journalism in Nigeria. They are always here, 3 of them. Soji, Ray, and Yakubu Muhammad. The day they told us our story, everybody here was almost going to cry. They said that, I'm now quoting them. Ray, who was the one that spoke, said that Maureen was one of the 3 ladies that made it to the peak of Nigerian journalism. Well, they nurtured her, they mentored her. The other 2 are Louisa Aguirre-Rossi, now Louisa Ayonote, and then Ellen Ezekiel. These are the ladies that became editors of world-class media outlets. But again, he told us that out of the 3, Maureen superseded all of them because at some point in Newsweek, she became the editor of editors. Can you understand it? These are the men for speaking here in this same hall. And I asked Momo, how come you and I are distant cousins? And I don't know the story. So if Ray didn't come here to tell us the story, and you kept everything. This is her life. Very, very unassuming. But you could see that she had gone in this her chosen profession. So Momo will talk about that. At this juncture, we're still going to be, I'll hand over.
Thank you, Emetetu. Thank you. You know, when the knights are speaking, you don't interrupt them. So I waited for that to continue. So now let us go follow the program because I know many of our guests are. The claim is if you could waiting for some of them to go. But knowing them for their humility, they wouldn't want to go late. it is time for us to follow the program and have the chairman speak. But before the chairman comes, the chairman's second half has not been, best half has not been introduced. So let us give a hand to Mrs. Reverend Mrs. Jerry Eko. I don't want the chairman to finish here and then get home and there is traffic at home. So on that note, chairman, please give us your address, welcome address. Please, Professor Eko, it's your time to give us your welcome address. We can spend the whole time talking about Maureen, but well, by the time you feel, I know you must have seen the bit of her about Prof. Over to you.
Thanks. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the guest lecturer, let me also rest on existing protocol. I will introduce my wife, but already has done so I can go peacefully. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the 5th anniversary lecture of the Realnews publications. The theme of this year's lecture, African Leadership in a Turbulent Era, is very timely and relevant given the present global situation. The world has never experienced so much certainty since the end of the Second World War, I think. Yes, there have been tensions since then, especially with the rivalry of the then two superpowers, former Soviet Union and the USA. At the end of the Cold War, observers had thought that the world would become a better place for all citizens, despite the inherent ideological debate. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, the unipolar system headed by the USA became exposed to its inconsistent policies at the global level. It was common knowledge that even with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the latter was and still very powerful militarily. Nonetheless, the possession of nuclear arsenals by countries was relatively subdued. The wars in Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the resulting outcomes, such as the rise of ISIS, among others, truncated the erstwhile fragile global peace. Today, the global players in Europe and the USA are involved in containing ISIS, spread of nuclear arsenals, tensions in Yemen, war in Syria, with the aim of perhaps preventing the Third World War. The planned exit of Britain from the European Union and the election of Donald J. Trump as President of the United States have sent shocks to the global environment. It seems there is a return to nationalism, signaling an end to neoliberalism within the context of globalization. The point to ponder with is, did globalization benefit African countries? Did African economies practice neoliberalism, no matter how defined? In all the issues I've just described, what were the positions of African leaders? Did such position even matter? On the economic front, the global economy is still recovering sluggishly from the 2008-9 Great Recession. African economies were affected either directly or indirectly through a client status. However, the impact of the global economic recession on African economies was not that severe. What has been the position of African leaders in this turbulent world? Is it just, let's sit down and look, or sit down and look? The African Union, which should represent the collective voice of Africa, do make pronouncements from time to time on the global situation. But one wonders whether such statements are taken seriously by Europeans and American leaders. The performance of African economies has been dismal, to say the least, with rising unemployment, rising poverty, widening inequality, and deterioration in the provision of social services to citizens. Leadership cannot be taken seriously in our continent. After almost 60 years of attaining political independence, leadership in Africa in the last 20 years has not shown any positive sign of moving towards economic independence. Today, almost all the countries depend on the export of commodities, whether agric or minerals. They remain backward and underdeveloped because the African leadership is busy developing underdevelopment. Its role in the global sphere is albeit marginal. The African continent, especially Sub-Saharan Africa, has a strong dynamic economy. Its citizens will be respected globally. The perception that Africa is rising is not only a misnomer but an illusion. How can Africa be rising, yet poverty is rising and inequality is widening despite its rich human and mineral resources? How can Africa be rising, yet thousands of Africans try every day to cross to Europe in search of better life, with hundreds drowning in the seas of Europe? There is no doubt that with our wealth of experience and qualifications, our guest lecturer, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, I can't pronounce it well, and yet we share the same high school. The eminent global scholar, champion of human rights, I respect her a lot, especially in terms of bringing back our girls. My wife came here just to meet her for the first time. I have no doubt that she will provide a robust and illuminating analysis of the subject matter, African leadership in a turbulent era. Thank you.
Please, another hand for our chairman. You see that he already gave us the citation. That is the great thing about great people. Great people don't talk about them. They don't remember themselves because other people remember them. Another hand to the chairman and then to our guest lecturer. So it is time for us to, do I even go through reading? Don't you know her enough? Do you want to bore me with a reading? Because I feel like talking from my head because what I know about her, they have given me something to read about the woman, about the mother. I shouldn't read, she says. This is Madam Due Process, in case you have forgotten. If you miss her low cut, you will not miss her pair of glasses. They come in unique forms. If you miss her whatever, every other thing, you won't miss the way she presents the passion, the vivacity, the energy, and the passion that she brings into to convince you. In fact, if you are not convinced by the time she finishes, then I don't know who is going to convince you. So I'm not reading, but I'm telling what I know about our guest lecturer. Oby Ezekwesili, that's the name. Oby, people call Oby. Oby Ezekwesili is somebody who has come to eat. He said, come and chop. But you know that her life is not about chopping. If anything, in fact, people are preventing her from eating. But she says, no. I'm not just that I will look for food for other people to eat. And that is the greatest she has. What is it that is about this lady that you don't know? People want to meet her. She's not a Nollywood actress. She's not a politician, because otherwise, if this was a political event, I can tell you that this place would be filled. This hall, in fact, they will be bouncing back so many people. But because it's about cerebral, it's about intelligence. And that is why Africa is where we are. Hence this topic, leadership. And particularly the turbulent. Well, we thought that military rule was gone. But you can now see that back there in Zimbabwe, our dear Uncle Bob, since he refused to go, they are helping him. In Africa, they don't retire, they don't resign. It's either they are pushed or they die in office. But that is about Africa and leadership. You see that I'm deviating. And to top it all, from industries, Ministry of Industry, people forget that she was there. The procurement, the native, the extractive industry bill and everything, procurement during President Obasanjo's time. Those milestones were recorded during her time. She was there for how many, 6 years at industry and later education. And see where we are in education. Where teachers cannot pass the exam they are setting for their students. It was followed through with those, because it's not for lack of policy, but execution and implementation. And then consistency. Do we follow through? We don't. So these are some of the issues that I hope. I'm not preempting, I haven't seen what she's not going to talk about. In fact, if they are veering toward what she's going to talk about, knowing her, she will even go to another place and make sure that what she's giving us is original. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, may we welcome the ambassador of democracy, our own dear lady, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. I didn't tell you what democracy means, but ma'am, you are welcome. You're welcome. God bless you. Please tell us. We are waiting. We are anxious. We are expectant. But I know you are equal to the task. Another hand for our mother, our sister, and a patriotic Nigerian. I wanted to seize this, but I know that will prevent you from giving the lecture. Here you are.
My goodness. I wonder what his wife goes through. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure to be able to join you in Lagos for this event. When the MC was talking about the quality of person that we have in Maureen Chibo, I was nodding my head because that was a perfect description of Maureen. She totally behaves like that irrepressible widow that would not allow anybody, not least a wicked judge, stop her from her mission. I couldn't have said no to today, even though I had every reason not to be able to. As you would see, I would have to leave very early, just because I must leave. And then I am here because I must be here. Can't even imagine a moral, facing me if I didn't make it eventually. I am very delighted to be able to speak to this topic, and I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for laying the context for me very well. African leadership, by the way, I am so delighted to share the stage with all of you on the discussants of today. And I want to thank my dear brother Martin Agwai, General. He and I were in the same government, and I can tell you that this particular general is one that I love very much, because he stands shoulders above in many ways. We must celebrate professionalism and integrity amongst us, and Martin's is one of those ones that I can say that for. So thank you very much. He came here because he said, I must be here when my sister speaks. So thank you very much for the honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic says African leadership in an era of turbulence. And I start by saying, what is leadership? Leadership is that activity of leading, inspiring, motivating a group of people to accomplish a common objective of goal. It is the process of social influence. It inspires and guides the people that follow a leader to accomplish specific tasks. Leadership is the capacity of an individual to mobilize group resources for the purpose of accomplishing an agreed vision, a purpose, an objective, a goal, a target. Leadership can be done anywhere and anytime. We all can actually be leaders in any era, and any moment. To solve any problem of humankind takes leadership. The spectrum goes from the least problems to the most complex of problems. They all require leadership. For example, when there is a traffic chaos in Lagos or in Nairobi, and confusion reigns with gridlock needing to be solved, anyone of you who resides in Lagos can agree that that is a problem that requires leadership. When the Lagosian is faced with traffic jam, it ceases to be a mere event into a matter of life and death because of the effect it could have on their movement and program for the day. Finding everyone to even more halt in movement. In such situation, the leader is that one person that counts the cost of doing nothing to be greater than the cost of the insults they would receive if they dared to do something. Ladies and gentlemen, if a person decided in the midst of that chaos to try to solve the problem, the person would have decided to sacrifice his or her comfort by stepping into the problem and becoming a manifestation of leadership in action. To solve the gridlock problem requires a very serious process of leadership. It is certain that the person will not only receive unmerited insults, but their attempt at calming down everybody would have some of the people ask them, who sent you? Not only would they question his legitimacy or her legitimacy to solving a common problem, but they would actually cast aspersions on the intention. As the individual starts proposing technical solutions to that gridlock, persuading each driver to move their car in certain directions in order to disentangle the logjam, they would question every directive that that person would give, and then they would obstruct and oppose even the right directive that would make that logjam terminate. Don't even begin to imagine the level of opposition that would happen if that emergent leader happened to be a woman. The men in that logjam would ask her, where is your husband? In that case, the woman would have to doubly determine to solve the problem more than her male counterparts, because she needs to prove that she can solve the problem. Now I hear somebody muttering something in defense of men. But the decision of anyone in that gridlock to solve a problem becomes gender neutral to the extent that that one person who has made that determination to solve a common problem sense of purpose. so that regardless of the gender of the individual, although they had the choice to have sat back in their cars shouting like every other person, they nonetheless decided that the common good is worth sacrificing for. They could have decided otherwise, but by deciding to be singularly minded, ignoring the insults, and finding ways to dismantle the gridlock, and standing at the chaos, at the center of the chaos, remaining even while opposed, being persuasive and being diligent in seeking the technical solution, they ultimately convinced and mobilized the people caught in the gridlock to act in certain ways that helped to solve the problem, a common problem. As this individual persists and the gridlock is broken and the road is cleared, with everyone well on their way, happy to escape another costly paralysis that has implications for the productivity of the people of Lagos and the state, as well as the Nigerian society, people fail to realize what depth of leadership that took. As it is with small things like this, so it is with leading nations. So it is with leading companies. So it is with leading families. So it is leadership lends itself to ability and transfer of learning. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that comes out of this description of how leadership can happen at any level is that something was broken that needed to be fixed. And from amongst all the people, a leader arose to fix a broken condition. Leaders emerge to fix things. Leaders fix things. That's why the Americans say if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Unfortunately today, we are in an era of real turbulence. And Professor Eko has made a good job of giving us the ecosystem of the kind of turbulence that the world faces. Whether it is in terms of economies or the politics and even the democracies, or it's in terms of the security of the world or health-related issues, or even uncertainties as to the productivity in agriculture for the world and food insecurity, or it's in terms of climate change-related challenges, or all kinds of unanticipated pandemics that stand in the horizon or still unknown. One thing is clear: the world faces turbulence. And so leadership in times of certainty cannot be the same in seasons that we are in. The crisis that leadership must deal with requires a mix of urgency, high stakes to manage the uncertainty. In a turbulent era, the leader not only fixes things to end the turbulence, but goes further to stabilize the future by building in resilience that will prevent a relapse. Is there a legitimate reason to consider this era for Africa a turbulent era different from all the other times we have known? Is there a legitimate basis? Is there an empirical basis for us to reach such conclusion? Why does Africa need any special kind of leadership at a time like this? Why did we not call for this kind of a conference to discuss leadership in Africa even 2 decades ago? Why didn't we do that 10 years ago? Why did we not do that 50 years ago at the independence of many of the countries on the continent? Well, the reason is simple. Africa is closer to that threshold in the spectrum of the development process where failure becomes unsustainable. For so many decades, it has been almost okay for Africa to perform badly. But this era is an era in which Africa cannot afford to continue to fail. Although there is enough factual evidence that Africa has in fact performed slightly better than it used to in economic growth, rising from negative growth levels of -1 to levels that were lowly in the decades of the 80s and 90s of less than 2 to 3%, considerably lower than the population growth rate of about 3.3% annually. Africa, at the turn of the new century, right from 2000 until now, began to experience more positive growth levels, even though some 1/3 of the African countries remain in the lowly bottoms in terms of growth, at slow pace of growth. And for these countries, we often say that they are stuck in low equilibrium growth levels. But Africa has registered some 4 to 5% of annual growth over a period of a decade before the outset of the global financial economic crisis of 2008 and 2009. Regardless of the cheering news of this turning of the corner into economic growth that is more positive, the continent remains the most daunting development challenge for the world. And Professor Ebo did outline why that is so. It is so because despite the fact that we today can identify at least 6 to 7 African countries that have been steady in growth levels of between 6 and 7% and more sometimes, they are growing from a very low base. Also, for the ones that have grown at that average of 4 to 5% annually, and in current data 2015-2016 have grown only between 3 to 4% on the average for the continent. That growth has not translated into better quality of life for the larger number of Africans. So that the disconnect between growth and improvement in the standard of living of the people is exactly the leadership gap. Because leadership exists for the common good. And the common good is expressed in terms of improvement in the quality of life of citizens. Today in Africa, despite the growth, the economic growth, income levels remain stuck because the economies of the continent are structurally not different from the pattern they were in the 60s. The continent continues to wrestle with low productivity. The productivity factor of the continent is lower than global average by as much as 60%. The continent has a major unemployment crisis, especially with its youthful population. The continent still has more than 42% of its people in the class of the poor, surviving on less than $1.75 a day. Of that population of the poor, women make up an unhealthy 60% of that number. So that there is feminization of poverty on the continent. It is a continent that welcomes about 11 to 12 million young people into the labor market annually. But the economies of the continent do not expand rapidly enough to absorb more than 10% of those young people. That is a time bomb. The greatest imagery of a continent that has battered below its potentials is in the fact of the African who rationally assesses the risk of staying on the continent as considerably higher than the risk of dying in the desert or the Mediterranean Sea. That's unbelievable. To the extent that we have thousands of people from our continent weighing their risks in this order, to that extent do we see a major leadership gap in the governance of our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the key data for me is that although Africa has made some progress even on social issues like health and education for human development and access to water and sanitation at certain levels, and made some significant cultural and political progress because of the democratization process on the continent. We, as a continent, and as individual countries, and as people of the continent, have not made the level of progress that compares with our possibilities. I use one indicator. Our continent's gross domestic product is about $1.7 trillion. This is the equivalent of the GDP of Brazil. How can the GDP of 54 African countries be the equivalent GDP of a single country in Latin America? It should give us reason to understanding why a topic of this kind at a time like this is most auspicious. By economic modeling, we should be more than triple the size that we are as a continent if we did the right things in economic, political, and other forms of leadership. Were the whole of Africa being effectively led and governed, our performance would be much better than it is today. We still have an unusual number of children dying before the age of 1 and 5. We still have mothers dying in hospitals at childbirth in 2017. We still have the largest number of African children that should be in school out of school. We occupy the lowest bottoms in the measurements of productivity, competitiveness, and good governance in almost every indicator that is global. How can we as a continent be the image of underperformance? The world has evolved so rapidly that knowledge is available and prolific. Knowledge is at its cheapest today and more accessible than it has ever been in the history of humanity. One of the things that we know today is that development as a process follows certain fundamental framework. There is a universalism of the application of this framework, even though it recognizes the eccentricities of each country and each region that pursues development. Countries know the framework or pathway to development more than used to be the case. Within the 20th century to date, countries that were once poor have used the combination of this framework as a basis to make a progression from third to first world. Ladies and gentlemen, countries that were once poor have combined sound macroeconomic policies, sound microeconomic policies, sound sectoral policies, strong structural policies to kickstart their development processes. Ladies and gentlemen, those same countries concurrently ensured the emergence of institutions to underpin the irreversibility of gains that sound policies produce. Institutions being the way a people do their things have been important as a variable necessary to mix with sound policies in order for development to happen. These institutions evolved and are founded on the rule of law, setting the rules of the game so that the development process could be fast-tracked on the basis of predictability of outcomes at a certain level. Next, these countries identified the right mix of investment priorities that they required, and they did so efficiently and effectively. They embarked on key public investments that provided basic public goods and services for their entire population, especially the poor amongst them, and they invested in critical infrastructure and produced world-class talents and skills for their private sector. Hardly any country that went from third world to first sidestepped this framework of development, even if they made sure to nuance according to their peculiarities. If there is indeed evidence that this framework for development, this combination of sound policies, of strong and vibrant institutions, of investments that are efficient and effective in the provision of public goods, basic services, and goods for citizens as well as for businesses, have worked and enabled the progression of other countries in other continents. Why then has this not happened? Why then has this not happened on our continent? Why has this eluded us? Why has it seemed as if the development process is rocket science to Africa? The answer, my distinguished audience, is in the fact that no country has been found to develop without good governance. It is impossible to develop without good governance. So what is good governance? Good governance is about the processes for making and implementing decisions. But it is not only about making correct decisions, but about the best possible process for making those decisions. Good governance signifies the way an administration improves the standard of living of the members of its society by creating and making available the basic amenities of life, providing the people security, inspiring them to aspire to build a promising future. When it provides on an equal and equitable basis access to opportunities for their personal growth, availing the people the space to participate and enabling them with the capacity to help shape public policy. It includes the architecture of a responsive judicial system which dispenses justice on merits in a fair, unbiased, and meaningful manner. And more fundamentally, for a government, good governance means the sum total of a value infrastructure that ensures transparency, accountability, probity, and overriding integrity in each wing of function of government. The UN Economic Commission states that good governance has three major characteristics. It is participatory, it is consensus-oriented, it is accountable, it is equitable and inclusive, it follows the rule of law. It assures that corruption is minimized, responsive to the present and future needs of society. In other words, it is intergenerational. Ladies and gentlemen, building lasting institutions, structures, systems, and processes are prerequisite to the evolution of good governance. I'd like to elaborate on just about a couple, maybe a couple of these features of good governance. Let's take participation. Participation advocates for the broad inclusion of constituents in the direction and operation of political systems beyond the basic premise that democracy offers the citizens the opportunity to be in power by determining who governs them. So the participation of the citizens is an expression of involvement in governance. Participatory democracy tends to advocate more involved forms of citizens' participation than the basics. Participatory democracy strives to create opportunities for all members of a population to make meaningful contribution to decision making and seeks to broaden the range of people who have access to such decision making process. That is why I took delight in speaking to some of the young people who invited me to an event some 4 years ago. And I said to them, you sit and you are angry at our generation and the generation before us for having handed you this state of affairs. But would it not be better if you understood that you're not that powerless? Every citizen in a democracy is powerful beyond measure. Unfortunately, because citizens haven't understood this, they are less involved in the democracy than they should be. And I introduced them to a concept that I call the office of the citizen. Without the office of the citizen, there will be no office of the president in a democracy. Without the office of the citizen, there will not be the office of the lawmaker or the governor or the local government councillor. So that the office of the citizen, when it is not inactive, when it is not actively engaged in the democratic process, but is dormant, does injustice to the definition of participatory democracy. We must all activate our offices of the citizen. For the citizen has been given every right to determine the quality of leadership and governance that it considers desirable to itself. A governance culture that nourishes and encourages the voice of citizens in public debate of policies, priorities, and legislation, while being accommodating of dissension, goes a long way in ensuring continuous increase in the scale of participation. Governments that encourage participation usually respect the citizens' right to associate freely and to express themselves without any fear of repression. Unfortunately, we are still held in our mindset as citizens as though we need the permission of government in order to speak to issues that concern us. I say to you, my distinguished Nigerians today, that in a democracy, your constitution has enormously empowered you and I to govern through our office of the citizen. A citizen does not need a title in government in order to become a person with an opinion on issues of governance. That's right. No citizen can avoid governance, but all citizens, maybe I put it differently, no citizen can avoid governance, but not all citizens can do politics. You can afford not to do politics, but you cannot afford not to do governance. Every citizen of the continent must speak up their office of the citizen, because through that office they determine leadership of the kind that will govern them. Ladies and gentlemen, I take on transparency. This is operating in such a way that it is easy for others to see what actions are taken by those who govern and the institutions they lead, such that decisions taken and their enforcement are done in a way that follows rules and regulations, or simply put, acting in accordance with known rules of the game. Transparency suggests that a government, its agencies and agents conduct affairs in a way that everyone who desires to follow the actions being taken can have access to the totality of relevant information. It is fitting that this is an event laid on by one of the outstanding women in journalism, Maureen Chibo. I thought that by this time we would practice. The media, being the forte state of the realm, is the only profession mentioned in the Constitution. That says something, other than the three arms of government. It's the media that gets in place. It doesn't talk about economists, doesn't talk about chartered accountants, doesn't talk about doctors or scientists. The Constitution gives a role to the media. And that's because of how transparency, access to information, is the bedrock of accountability, another concept that shows good governance in any society. Accountability, which is integral to transparency, is a concept that lays down an expectation that in governance, those who exercise authority on the basis of public trust must be answerable, blameworthy. No one can pretend sainthood when they govern. They must be vulnerable to society giving them feedback. Nobody can say, I have attained ecclesiastical standards, so you dare not question me. That is a misnomer in democracy. So accountability is the bedrock of democracy. According to Clarence A. Dijkstra, the quest for responsibility was written by him as far back as 1939. And he said it. Everyone who gives up their powers in a delegated authority to another has the power to demand accountability from he or she unto whom it was given. Democracy and democratic accountability. Accountability is the currency of leadership. Because it is through accountability that a leader owes those that have granted them or granted him or her legitimacy to exercise authority on their behalf a feedback on how their authority is being used. True leadership must come with readiness of the leader to acknowledge their responsibility for actions, decisions, and policies in governance, and implementation specific to the expectations of their office. So you cannot be one of those who like to lead but have no interest in accepting public accountability. That goes with leading. It's the kind of leadership that Africa needs in an era of turbulence. Leadership that will not compromise on the integrity of democracy. But what does accountability look like? It means that an institution, a sector, an arm of government, or an individual accepts responsibility for the outcomes expected of them, both good and bad. For example, at this time, the Nigerian citizens are eager to see conclusive arraignment, prosecution, and sanctioning of the corrupt. Therefore, the EFCC, the ICPC, the police and other investigative arms, the Ministry of Justice, the lawyers, and above all, the judiciary, working in hand with the utmost authority in a democracy, the president, must prove that fighting corruption is not a mere exercise in rhetorics. The public has expectations that cases of corruption will be thoroughly investigated and speedily prosecuted and concluded, and that the guilty will in fact be jailed. It's an expectation for which true leadership in a turbulent era must be accountable. Accountability would therefore instruct that all the law enforcement bodies, the bar and the bench, would fully align with public agitation, align with the demand and the expectation of the Nigerian people. Ladies and gentlemen, the judiciary in particular must then rise to the expectation of the citizens to see crime properly sanctioned, consistently and compliant with due process. To do so is to be accountable. And in a democracy, all arms of government must be accountable to the Nigerian people. Let me bring in a country. Countries like Singapore have emerged within 5 decades as models of good governance. So they demonstrate to us that good governance is very possible. In a matter of 5 decades, Singapore has made progress that is exemplified by its $65,000 income per capita, compared to the continent average of 2,157 for countries of Africa, with which Singapore attained independence about the same time. By being able to generate 65,000 income per capita, and therefore improving the well-being of citizens, Singapore and some of other countries like it have raised the right questions about the governance of our continent. To the extent that good governance is a process that is human-led, it is to that extent that we must interrogate the quality of leadership that has given Africa poor governance as against the good governance that Singaporeans have enjoyed. The Youth City Connection. So everything we said about good governance is not something that is done through engineering. There is a human centeredness in good governance. We can make inference from the features of good governance what poor governance looks like. It is accurate to surmise that poor governance is the opposite of good governance. And the worst affected in poor governance are the poor and the most vulnerable in society. So, when there is poor governance and we can correlate it to poor leadership, it means that leadership loses the essence of the definition of leadership. Because leadership is meant for the common good. But when leadership is exercised in the breach, it punishes those that most need it to function well. And therefore, it blemishes itself. So the continent has faced a blemish in leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, environments of poor governance are more susceptible to corruption as the incentive and reward system become perverted by the failure of leadership to set the pattern of reward for good conduct and punishment for criminality. The rest of society adapts to the distortion. Since humans are mostly rational beings, in societies, it is what gets rewarded that gets supplied. And so because bad behavior is entrenched as what must be rewarded by leadership, the citizens hide every possibility of good behavior and supply bad behavior in order to attain the reward. I'm soon bringing this to a quick end. What research says to us is that whatever society, or in whatever society, the act of corruption is profitable and carries low cost, there will be incentive for more corruption. So corruption proliferates in such a society and opens the door for more opportunity to engage in newer types of corruption. So rather than innovate ways of doing things that would lead to progress of society, such a perverted environment innovates new forms of corruption daily. Is that not the reason why whatever sector you touch in Nigeria, you see dead bodies buried? It's a ruination. It's a ruination. The failure of leadership plunged the continent into this morass, where there is little or no consequence for corrupt behavior. It attains an attractive and usually rewarding option. More people join the low-cost, non-risky route to riches. And society begins to degenerate because incentives and values become distorted, with the right conducts of honesty and hard work no longer considered as productive and rewarding. Let me circle back again to sound policies, strong institutions, effective, efficient investments in public goods and services, in order to conclude that in the turbulent 21st century, you cannot find a technological solution to the absence of good governance. That is the indispensability of leadership. The robots are not going to substitute for a failure of leadership. Artificial intelligence will not be a substitute for a failure of leadership. We must get it right with leadership. Leadership is at the center and common to all the three variables that I mentioned in the framework. For our continent, it is more evident that the absence of good governance is as a result of the crisis of leadership, the famine of leadership, which expresses itself in all forms of deficit and variability in improvement levels of government across the continent. Such leadership deficit has rendered African countries not capable of fully galvanizing the right policies, right institutions, and the right investment mix required for our own development process. Leadership is at the center and common to all the variables in the development framework. In policy making, for example, and policy execution, you need leaders. You need people who can share and help set vision that inspires most of the people. Such people who can assemble those who are competently trained and thus capable of thinking through complex sectoral and thematic issues. People who have the skills to identify key and associated constraints, threats and problems, as well as strengths and opportunities. Such people that can propose options of tested and data-validated solutions, and who have the capacity and the willingness to choose the best possible solution for problems of all kinds in order to meet the needs of the common. In policy leadership, you need people who can mobilize the range of human, technical, and financial resources necessary for successful execution, and therefore can lead the execution process until results are generated. Policy making requires people who, even when the result of a policy is failure, are willing to swiftly learn from it by reviewing and reformatting their approach. Prof, you know what I'm talking about. You teach this to your students. Policy leadership requires people who welcome feedback from all segments and stakeholders in society and feel obliged to be accountable to them. In building institutions, you need leadership. You need people who take care, who take charge. You need people who take charge of starting off the institution's building process and can sustain effort until they evolve into a practice. It is a false dichotomy to debate a zero-sum game in the relationship between the role of people and the role of institutions. It is an artificial construct to assume that institutions can do everything and individuals can do nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, institutions and individuals are not mutually exclusive in the governance process. We need individuals as much as we need institutions. It will take good, strong individuals in a society to lay down the foundation for the emergence of durable and predictable systems, processes, procedures, and structures, and practices over time that are then regarded as institutions. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. It would also require people that are good and strong to sustain established practices through adherence to the rules and submission to inbuilt checks and balances. So disconnecting people from institutions is anomalous. We must produce people who help to build institutions. We must produce people who run institutions. We must produce people who act as the checks and the balances for institutions to run. We must produce that. They are not mutually exclusive. The institutional process cannot be merely legislated. Codification through laws cannot be seen as an end in themselves. It is also why establishing an agency with responsibility for a certain part of an issue of governance can be seen as progress, but must not be conflated as institution building. It is simply a process toward institution building. We first need a few good men and women to lead our law and enforcement process, our judiciaries, our customs, our immigration, our audit offices, Accountant General's Office, our Public Accounts Committee, our Parliament, and such other agencies of the democratic society. And then, as we participate, we begin to lay the foundation for the evolution of a practice of democracy. That's what democratic accountability becomes. And that's when you say that a society is governed on the basis of institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, institutions start evolving as these good and strong people in and outside of government work to exert pressure on the statutory mandate of those aspects of governance. Over time, these few and strong, good and strong people would have set a standard of performance in their interpretation and execution of their mandate. All African countries urgently need to understand the evolutionary process of institutions building. Otherwise, we can keep talking about it as though institutions are things that just happen. Institutions don't just happen. They are the way of doing things. They evolve. For effective and efficient investment, we need leaders. We need leaders who understand that resources are scarce. For example, the budget of Ghana for solving a myriad of needs is less than 1/10 the budget of New York City. And yet, as scarce as those resources are, if you don't have leaders for effectiveness and efficiency in public investment, what do you think would happen? They would sit around the table and reduce governance to the award of contracts to themselves and families and friends. When you have leaders for effective and efficient investments, the leaders would look at investment in education, for example, as being the opportunity for more children attaining good learning outcomes from our school systems on the continent. They would look at it in the health sector as the opportunity to reduce the number of children and women dying needlessly from absence of health resources. They would look at the budget for infrastructure as being necessary to reduce the cost of doing business on the continent in order that businesses will be competitive. The leaders that give their countries effective and efficient investment in public good never consider government spending as their own pathway to personal riches. They eschew such ignoble and contemptible schemes that can undermine the high-order objective of ensuring that public goods are delivered to the citizens as well as businesses. They do not reduce the opportunity of their service to their people to transactions. They invest. They invest to produce the highest development impact in their society. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the World Bank estimate, Africa requires more than $93 billion of investment in infrastructure to close the gap. Where would these come from? While pondering where this would come from, the true leaders that Africa needs in a time of turbulence are the leaders who would first maximize value in the scarce resources available to the continent. They would seek to significantly increase the value for money ratios for the continent. The second thing they would do is that they would, as signals and data begin to show that they are spending their scarce resources better, they would leverage other sources of investment. But for as long as the continent is seen as a continent that corruptly depletes its own resources, it cannot be a magnet of attraction for other resources from other sources. So, I end on a note that there are three things that I always have found that leaders of countries that have done better than us have shown. I have seen that they possess in of themselves character, they possess competence, and they possess capacity. Character, competence, and capacity. A lot of what I said already has taken care of competence, taken care of even capacity. That ability to stay with the problem regardless of how complex it is until it is solved. We started it off by talking about the man or the woman controlling the Lagos gridlock. But I didn't give that much time yet to the real heart of the matter of the challenge that we have in the quality of African leadership. It is the character deficit in African leadership. For the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that when there is a deficit of character in leadership, the leader becomes a locust to the common good. The only function that we know of the locust I think you have given my speech for me. So let me say that the bad news for us is that whether it is Nigeria or Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Zimbabwe, look at the mess in Zimbabwe. My generation knew Robert Mugabe as a hero. That's what we knew him for. And there people in my generation here, yes, we knew him as a hero. He fought down the Rhodesian, what's that, Ian Smith? Oh, yeah? Yes. He was a hero. He became a locust to his country. Look at the tragic end. A professor of leadership makes my point very well when he innovated a concept called adaptive leadership. They require that the leader would have the moral credential on the basis of which to mobilize all relevant stakeholders to a solution. The thing about adaptive leadership is that it forces the person with the power of influence to make the rest agree to a mindset change. There is a fundamental mindset issue that is required for a disruption on a continent. The mindset being that the Africans actually think we're not deserving of good governance. We have been comfortable with dismal performance of our leadership. We have been absolutely accepting of poor performance But it is time for us to disrupt that mindset. The attribute of character in leadership has to be sine qua non in our definition of leadership for this era. In a season of turbulence, you need character-based leadership. Character-based leadership has to be nurtured in a deliberate and an intentional way across our continent, amongst our populace, in order that we stand a chance that many more that begin to gain formal authority would not have to repeat the pattern of the locus in the governance of the common good. Are you getting it? Is it not the worst manifestation of paucity of character-based leadership that our continent is the poster continent for endemic corruption? Is it not? Ladies and gentlemen, we must grow at a minimum of 7% around as a continent in order to stand a chance of lifting our citizens out of poverty. A country, China, has shown that it can be done. In 30 years, China, by combining policies, institutions, and efficient, effective investment, has lifted 700 million Chinese out of poverty. In contrast, our continent still has come up as the continent where you have the largest stock of poor people in the world. Our inequality index is greater than the global average at 0.4 out of a possible 1, where 1 is the highest sign of inequality. We have today a population of about 1.2 billion people. Women are at the periphery of our development process. Young people hardly show up in the way we map productivity. Majority of our young people are actually outside of the decision-making process for matters that concern their present and their future. What does this say to us? It says to us that this is the time for us to welcome disruption in African leadership. The same order of leadership cannot take Africa out of the rut. It is time for us to disrupt the pattern of leadership that has in many ways failed to deliver good outcomes to the majority of Africans. So, here are 5 things that I ended. Number 1, according to the US Census Bureau, there are approximately 241 million people aged 15 to 29 in Africa as of 2010. They represent about 28% of the overall population. But 63% of Africa's overall population are below the age. So it's a youthful population. How can a youthful population be held hostage by the Mugabes of Zimbabwe? African youths are increasingly restive and will renege against poor governance, even if my generation will not. In sub-Saharan Africa, 3 in 5 of the total unemployed are young people. An average of 72% of our young people are the ones who live with less than $2 a day. This continent full of youthful people has now failed to the threshold where these young people are saying this failure can no longer be sustainable. We, they say, are the young who will not accept this failure in perpetuity. Their dissatisfaction with failure means that at some point they would seek to seize the middle ground and redirect the continent's journey. The question is, are we going to allow this to be orderly? Or are we going to ignore where the trend pushes and face a humpty-dumpty situation? The creative dissatisfaction of our young people, I am hopeful for them, should lead to a new social contract on the continent. A complete toppling of the existing order that is comfortable with Africa's average being celebrated as excellent. For these young ones, average is average. Average is not excellent. I love them for that. We must seek to find ways of taking another look at Africa's political processes and systems and incentives and structures in order to enable a very orderly pattern of handover to this generation. They now say, how can you be more interested in our problems that you will be gone by the time we have to solve them? You see, old people in Africa gather in a group talking about Africa. And the young ones say, which Africa are you discussing? Oldies. The second thing is, we must disrupt governance. We must grow with intensity this demand side of governance. We must place the power of the citizen to demand for transparency and accountability at the center of how Africans are governed. That's the only way we will build institutions, as you heard me say. Wherever the supply side of governance has been mostly active and therefore has fossilized into poor delivery of outcomes, the governments begin to act as monopolies. The monopolist has no incentive for quality. Neither do they have an incentive for good pricing. That is why, despite all the resources poured into Africa's development, citizens left the demand side inactive, and therefore the supply side led to be a monopolist, neither giving you good quality, nor even thinking they owe you any accountability on price. Those of you that have basic economics will know what I have said. We have to disrupt the gender inequality. We must disrupt a situation where women are not being considered by Africa as their important resource. Women constitute Africa's most visible secret weapon for development. Studies have shown us that when Africa unleashes significant better governance that is possible through its women, its current levels of productivity can double. Smart economics says that empowering the African woman is simply smart economics. It is nothing other than that. It benefits everyone. Number 4, we must disrupt our economic development strategy. We need emergent leaders that will topple the continent's obsession and tragic history with natural resources endowment. In its place, the leaders would evolve a human capital anchored development strategy that ennobles human dignity. Human dignity and respect for the dignity of life of citizens makes them the premium for development as against copper, gold, platinum, and all the other things. By the way, for Africa, this is a momentous period, though turbulent. It is a momentous period because Africa can lay stake to the 21st century. A disrupted Africa with a different mindset of performance of leadership can in fact accelerate the use of prolific knowledge available to solve all dimensions of problems that it has most efficiently and most productively than China and India. Acceleration effect of the fourth industrial revolution that we are in now means that in this era of artificial intelligence, in this era of the robotics, Internet of Things, simulation science, big data, blockchain technology, this continent has no reason to be fixed in poor performance. The exponential rate of progress that the continent is capable of making is already defined within this ecosystem of new disruptive technologies. Africa must disrupt its way of thinking of economic development. Finally, scale and size matter. So we must disrupt our rigid boundaries. We must use policies and institutions to connect the continent's people and ideas. At 13% of regional trade, Africa compares badly, with 35% in Latin America, 45% in Asia, 55% in North America, and 70% in Europe. Disrupt the often misguided idea of national sovereignty that holds citizens down. Citizens of Africa are finding themselves. The government must make it possible for this to translate into a greater Africa. Regional integration and leadership for it is an antidote to the turbulence of this era. Let me say to you that none of all of what I have said can lead to anything tangible without every one of us agreeing that we can, that Africans can, that there is absolutely nothing genetical about us that makes us inferior to all the ways that others have used knowledge to advance their greatness. It is time to disrupt our mindset. It is time for Africans to say goodbye to failure.
She has another event to attend. You saw her, she exclaimed without knowing that she had just dropped something that she needed to explain. But that is the nature of her life. Our sister, Oby Ezekwesili. I don't have the time to explain what Ezekwesili means, but for some of you, he said, if she's suited to give this lecture, can you give her another round of applause? Because that's what it means. That the crowd is giving to who is deserving of it. We will have to present her with a plaque for this event before she runs out. Maureen, While she's getting that, permit me to please welcome Femi Dagoro and the wife, the president of the Nigeria German Chamber of Commerce. They are here, they flew in from all the way to tell you how. And then Professor Abigail Ezekwesili, Ndisika, she is head of mass comm department representing the Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos. And then there is Honorable Victor Oche, the former Speaker of Delta State. Morning, I'm waiting for you to bring the flag. And then there is also Shehu Alkali Zaki, Assistant Corps Marshal, who is representing the Corps Marshal. Ahmed Kuru, please, you will have to do us the honor of presenting this, and then you take over from there. Madam, please, you cannot run away. I hope you have this speech, you have the presentation. So, your Ahmed, please.
Thank you, the government. And I have the fortune of presenting the event and the misfortune of talking after her. But it doesn't give me introduction. I'm all very, very, very proud of you. I don't think this will ever represent what we feel about you, but always know that it is always important, even in the house, to continuously tell your wife you love her, even if you don't mean it, because you actually do mean it. So, madam, we are very proud of you. This is another appreciation from Realnews to, again, show appreciation for being with them, for continuously supporting them, and for the inspiring paper that you presented here that I believe that you will help us to circulate it so that we will also be advocates of this conference. Thank you very much for the
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I really appreciate this, and thank you very much to the audience at this event. I just have to apologize that I am unable to stay even 1 more minute, and that's because of the obligation that nearly made me not come for this event. But I said I must do this event, but at this time, I just definitely must leave. So I hope you can forgive me. Thank you very much.
Photo. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Marshal FRC, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, welcome, sir.
And the chairman is there waiting. I hope everybody should please let us be creative, go back to our chairs, and do what we have to do. The disruption is becoming disruptive. So I hope we can have one meeting, please, so that the discussion level aspect of this meeting, and that is we have discussants who will be talking about leadership in various areas, and the first speaker on this is Ahmed Kuru, the Managing Director, Access Management Company of Nigeria, AMCO. Please welcome Mohammed. Please let us. We'll be talking about leadership in the complex. We will also deconstruct so that we can construct.
Thank you very much. I may not be as energetic as Obi. You know, she's an activist. Some of us are still trying to balance our accounts. After that, then maybe we'll go to the other side. Maureen, invited me about 9 months ago 9 months ago, she told me about this program. And honestly, I accepted, thinking that November would not come. Frankly speaking, I accepted thinking that November would not come. Unfortunately, and consistently, every 2 weeks, she was sending reminders. So after the first 3 months, I realized that it is not about her anymore, it is about me. Because it has reached a point where one's credibility is also in question. So I decided that there are only 2 reasons that will stop me from coming. Number one, God forbid, if I'm not well. And number 2, if my wife requires my attention in another room. So I thank God that my attention was required 24 hours before the event. So I'm here today. Leadership is a very interesting topic. Very interesting topic. And it gets more interesting when you are talking about leadership in Nigeria. This is for the simple reason that more often than not, we pretend in Nigeria, more often than not. We always say the right things. If you go anywhere in the world and you find if there are 2 or 3 black people, you realize that one of them is Nigerian and do very well. If anybody matters anywhere in the world again, that person must either have met a Nigerian, or must have heard about a Nigerian, or must have heard about Nigeria. So Nigeria is not a small country at all. So sometimes you wonder what is wrong with us. Because in terms of capacity, we are not lacking. In terms of character, I can also tell you, we have very good people. One of the finest gentlemen that is like a role model for me, the General Agua here, is one of the finest generals that we can think about anywhere in the world. And we were all familiar with why he even left the previous administration. I'm sure quite a lot of us know. So it's not that we don't also have good people. We have them. And we also have a capacity. But you see, there is always conspiracy of the elites. Whether it's from the southwest, whether it's from the north, whether it's from the east, I can assure you that we are all together because I cannot say I'm not an elite. Fortunately, So there is that conspiracy, and that conspiracy of the elites has worked so hard to retard the progress of Nigeria. It is only a Nigerian that would always, like Dr. said before she left, he's very eager to accept a lower standard when it comes back home. If a Nigerian enters a toilet in London Heathrow or a toilet in Dubai International Airport and there is no tissue paper or the cleaner has not cleaned the toilet, you will hear his voice. Clearly, almost instantly. Immediately he lands in Lagos. There is no toilet at all for even somebody to clean. And he will humble himself and he will be very happy. He will carry his bag and he will go home. So sometimes you wonder, what is it in us that makes us so much to accept our situation? And it is very disturbing. And, you know, she gave an example about Singapore here. She gave an example about China. Now, when you talk about leadership, then you talk about democracy. I always ask my friends, I want to see a classic case of democracy, where democracy has brought progress. I want to see it. Where naked democracy, from ground zero, has brought progress. If you look at Singapore, what has happened before they talk about the democracy they are talking about today? How many lives were lost by the former prime minister? How many people he killed? I'm not saying we should kill anybody. I'm just, you know. Now, if you talk about China, people that were brought out of poverty, is that a democracy as defined by the Western world? When you come back to Africa, you talk about Rwanda, because people always talk about them. Now, we know the third term, the fourth term, the fifth term about the president of Rwanda. We know about the democracy they practice there. No journalist can go to Rwanda and abuse the president and sit in his house. It's not possible. Isn't it? So for me, and if you look at the Western world, the democracy they are enjoying today, what is the history? How did it evolve? To the extent that today they are enjoying the democracy that they want to foster on us wholly. So I believe that at a certain point in time, we need to understand the concept of democracy that works for us. For me, I always tell people privately that what worries me is not corruption. What worries me is impunity. Because if there is a consequent management around all our actions and our activities, I strongly believe that it will mitigate the corruptive tendencies that we see. That's corruption in America, that's corruption in Europe. But you know that once you take one naira, as you are taking it, you know the implication. And people are still taking it, but they immediately they catch you, you know the implication. So I think we need to work very hard about issues relating to impunity, because unless we remove impunity from our society, it will continue to affect the kind of leadership that we aspire to be. Let us look at the process of getting into office under the democracy that we practice, under the leadership that we aspire to be. Now, if as a leader, whether at the local government level, whether at the state level, or at the federal level, you stand and say that you are going to aspire to an office and you are not going to sit down and negotiate anything, you will not get into an office. You can decide when you get to the office and forget about the promises that you made. But the road to the office is booby-trapped. You have to compromise certain principles in you for you to get into the office. Which means that, strictly speaking, it is not only about service. If you go to the local government level today, and you're the chairman of the union or one of the ordinary guys is elected as the chairman, maybe the man has a motorcycle, Okada, and he served for 3 years. And after the 3rd year, he leaves office still with his Okada. The community will call him and remind him the cost they put on his grandfather, great-grandfather. That's why he's still very poor, that he couldn't even buy an office. In spite of the fact that we know his salary is maybe 250,000. If he has not succeeded in building a house, they will tell him that he's going to die a poor man. This is in our DNA. I don't know where we lost it. And frankly speaking, one gets worried when you look at how things are going. Because unless we continue to work towards building the institutions building the institutions, then we'll continue to struggle to make a difference. Because individually, if you pick anybody here, all these are potential governors, potential senators, and House of Rep members and chairmen of local governments. But when you bring people together and you put them in an office, somehow something happens, which tells you that the institution building mechanism needs to be looked at again. Because once institutions are strong, then you will not be insisting that somebody must get a particular agency or unit or department or ministry or local government. Because the institutions are strong enough, to resist any form of irregular behavior. Now, the best place, one of the best places to work for is the banking industry. And sometimes even under a turbulent kind of situation. Banking industry is the only industry where you book a very bad credit. I believe you know that credit is bad. Compromise, you have flouted all your credit policies. After 1 year, maybe you book the credit, maybe 2 billion naira. After 1 year, the credit will not be performing. After that, CBO will make you to make provisions. Then after 2 years, you write it off your books. And everybody goes home and sleeps. If you take 200 billion naira from the appropriation account, you are sent to jail. Meanwhile, you have put a 2 billion naira credit. And knowing fully well that that money was not supposed to be paid, and nothing happens. Because we operate in a system where we reward bad behavior. What we look at is what is the end result. What is the size of the balance sheet? This is a whiz kids. How do you justify having a capital of 100 billion and then recording a profit of 120 billion in a turbulent economy? How do you justify booking a credit and charging 25% or 27% interest rate in a country that in the manufacturing sector you cannot even have a return of 20% per annum? And then after 3 or 4 years you say that that account is performing. There are so many conspiracies and we are all part of it. All. You have the credit, you know it's not performing, you continue to run it over and you say it's performing. The banker gives it to you, he charges an interest that he knows there is no way you can pay that level of interest, and he will say it's performing, I will still give you the money. And that money is evergreen. Because if you look at the books of the commercial banks, how many loans are actually paid? What is the percentage of loans that are paid off to commercial banks? It will not be up to 20% because the credits are evergreen. Some of the credits must have been booked 20 years ago and they are still running. Because the day you call in that credit, that is the day that you know that that loan is not performing. That is also the impunity that you find within the credit process. Now, for my understanding is that if you run an institution where more than 40% of your loan is not performing, you have lost that right to continue to be the leader of that institution. If you have booked a credit, you book credit facilities worth 100 billion and 40 billion is not performing, automatically it means that your cost-income ratio cannot be less than 90%. And then you are still there operating. The only thing that they can charge you for is some regulatory penalties. You continue to do until and unless you run the institution aground. So what kind of leaders are we producing? We know, all of us, particularly members of the press, you know who is honest, you know who is dishonest, you know who has issues. It has no link with the way we relate with the people. No link whatsoever. Because this is the society that we live, because we have accepted a different kind of parameter to qualify our leaders. There is no way somebody will come to you and you know that definitely this person will perform if he has not put logistics on ground to support him. That becomes a challenge. And once he puts logistics on ground, we want to recoup his investment. As elections here are coming, these are the nightmares of politicians, because they know they have to buy their way through. And they buy their way through us. Because our leadership, identification, monitoring, and development mechanism is faulty, whether during turbulence period or during stable period. Because for us, Africa, I can tell you, all the times are the same. Because the statistics that we use, you cannot even, validate them properly. If you go to the Federal Office of Statistics, you'll be shocked how statistics are collected. And we use them as a basis for making supposedly sound economic, decisions. So we need to evaluate the process through which we produce our leaders. It's very important. Now, coming back home to AMCON, I'm sure most of us are familiar with the basic creation of AMCON, which is Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. Because of the global crisis of 2008-2009, governments all over the world realized the need for them to intervene to safeguard the financial infrastructure. And the financial infrastructure is dependent on the banking sector. And in Nigeria, there was a need for the government to create liquidity to the financial institutions so that they will be in a position to lend fresh money and jumpstart the economy. At that time, the non-performing loan ratio was more than 40%. And the regulatory threshold is supposed to be 5%. So AMCON was created, and the gist then was they will not use taxpayers' money to fund it. So bonds were created, and the loans were purchased from the banks, and AMCON purchased about 13,700 loans from commercial banks and paid 1.7 trillion naira for them from 23 commercial banks. Conversely, because of the crisis, again, AMCON now recapitalized some of these banks to bring their net asset value to zero by paying another 2.2 trillion, making it almost 3.9 trillion at that time. That was actually at that time bigger than the national budget. The framework is that there are assets backing the 1.7 trillion. Because we live in an inflationary economy, it is assumed that the value of the assets will go up. So it will provide for the 2.2 trillion that is not backed by any asset. Unfortunately, we didn't actually come out of the recession at that time, the economic crisis at that time. So the value of the assets also, went down. Now, it will interest you to know that out of the 14,000 obligors that we are talking about, only 350 companies, businesses, which in Nigeria means individuals, account for 80% of the whole 1.7 trillion. Only 350. And there are people that we all know them. And the accounts are there for everybody to see, whether it is CMRS, oil and gas, whether it is Capital Oil, whether it is Agri, whether it is, we all know them. Because no poor man will go and borrow 2 or 3 billion naira from the commercial bank. No. So you have 350 people that have not borrowed anything less than 10 billion. I know 10 billion, however reckless you are, you can't spend 10 billion in Owambe. It's not possible. However reckless you are, you know, however useless you are, what you do is you see a house that is worth 10 million naira, you buy 50 million, but the house will be there. Isn't it? Because you can't consume 10 billion naira. Some of them 147, some 100 billion, 80 billion, 20 billion. It's like a dream. And these were credits that were booked under a supposedly transparent and credible system. Somehow they were all transferred to AMCON. Up to today, we are struggling to see how do we recover those funds. Because the data, you know, typical Nigerian doesn't want to pay debt. Typical Nigerian. You can try it. Try and lend 10,000 naira to a neighbor for 1 month. When it is approaching the day that you are supposed to collect your debt, you start seeing another problem in his face, or he start telling you some problems that he wasn't telling you before. And if by any chance you return from office one day from a very bad day, and you enter your house and you meet him on the staircase, and you are wearing a very straight face, he will tell you that, are you not greeting me because of 10,000 naira? It will become a very touchy issue, isn't it? It will become a very touchy. So naturally, we don't want to pay debt. Naturally, people like to collect money and get out with it. Of course, I think emphasize we have very good people in Nigeria, but the majority of the people you see outside, they don't like to pay. And the big men don't like to pay at all. At all. Because somebody who has collected 50 billion, from where would they start? You know, because nobody has 50 billion naira cash today. Cash, nobody has. It must be in assets and all this. So now you start the process of recovering private jets, some houses in Banana Island, some houses in Ikoyi, Metama, and Sokoro. And you know what that means. And for us, that is the leadership situation that we found ourselves in the industry, because it requires courage, it requires integrity, and it requires determination. Because for you to tell somebody in his face, come on, pay. I told one guy reported me up and he said that I have issues with him because he has a private jet. That's why I want to collect the money from him. And I told him that, unfortunately for him, some of us are from the villages. So when we were growing up, we didn't see so many people with money. So it is not a motivation. People with money don't motivate some of us. I just told you one of my role model. If he has a lot of money now, I can tell you not to my role model because I was asking some questions. So you having private jet, even if you said you are going to give me a ride, I will enter. Not at this age that private jet should be an issue for me. You know, but his issue was that it is because that he rides in a private jet, that is why we want to now compromise his lifestyle. You know, so these are part of the challenges that you find in a leadership position, because there is no week that you will not see a petition coming from the president if somebody has written that AMCON has going to take over his business. AMCON do not take over anybody's business or property. There must be a proper court order. Now, before we reach that level, we would have tried all possible means. We took over ARIC. It is public knowledge. We didn't take over ARIC because we want to recover our money. We took over ARIC because ARIC was facing at that stage very serious financial crisis. If we had not entered ARIC in February 2017, ARIC would have collapsed as an airline. ARIC had 30 aircrafts, 30. At the time we entered, they had only 6 working. There's one organization, they call them Professor Technique. They were originally the maintenance partners. They had left. They are going to bring the people from Ethiopian Airlines to come to maintain, and they are very good, the best in Africa. Because even the Boeing are doing maintenance in their facilities in Addis Ababa. So, they were going. Insurance were not being paid. Salaries running in arrears of 7-8 months. People are flying, you are not paying them salary. You reschedule a flight, 8 o'clock flight for 3 days. Sometimes you cancel, you don't tell people. Meanwhile, you have collected your money. You collect money for people going to Kaduna, you fuel the aircraft and take the people going to Asaba. That's how we manage it. So we intervened, and for people that travel, whether they like it or not, today ARIC is the most reliable airline in Nigeria because they have about 14 aircrafts. 14. I'm telling you, go and the journalists, the aviation journalists, go and check it out. They are the most reliable airline today. They have about 12-14 airlines. But you see, government has no business to be part of any business at all. Thank God the current administration are looking at the aviation reform, because you need to look at aviation reform. You need to know why there's no airline in Nigeria that has successfully survived for 10 years. It tells you there's a problem. And that problem must be structural. When people have to leave Nigeria to go and buy aviation fuel in Ghana, it tells you there's a problem. When every kobo you spend there is foreign exchange, domicile, it tells you there's a problem. And like you said here, you pick any sector, whether it is health, whether it is water resources, whether it is roads, there's a problem. In fact, I was telling somebody today that today is supposed to be one of my happiest days in 2017. He said, why? I said, I opened the newspaper today and I saw that they have awarded a road contract to my place. That road, it was awarded in 1999 by the Obasanjo administration at the rate of I think 1.8 billion to one of the PDP coordinators in Kaduna. They said my time is up. Okay. Now the demands spend money, he didn't perform. After like 1.5 years, 2 years, there was pressure, it was revalued for I think around 2.9 or 3 billion naira. Again, they couldn't do the contract. Now they awarded the contract, or they are going to award the contract yesterday for 27 billion naira. Which is actually the correct price today. I'm telling you, this is the correct price today. Now, I have not been to my village 4 years. For a road of maybe 30 minutes, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. Your car will go into one hole like this. Somebody, a car coming will not know that you are already inside. It's very serious. In Nigeria, we have to go and take the picture, put it on channels, and don't forget we have representatives, huh? The National Assembly, yes, we do. No? So I was telling the person today that we will find out who is the contractor, because the contractor is also very key. If you go and give it to Kuru Construction Nigeria, that's a problem. That's a problem. So the credibility of the contractors also is very, very key. Because it determines how long you'll be able to utilize the road. So, For me, what is in the turbulent period, what you need to do is you need to focus. You need to focus, because in a turbulent environment as a leader, your objectives must be very clear. My objective is to recover when you abuse me. I can tell you, assignment in the last 3 years, the kind of animosity enemies that have created me, I have not seen it in the last 2 years in my banking career. Last 2 years, because nobody wants to pay. The moment you ask somebody, please pay, they have become his enemy. He said, okay, it's 10 billion naira, I want to pay 2 billion. I said, okay, how about 8 billion? What will happen to it? He said, no, that's the only thing I have. But the issue is not, this is not the only thing you have. The issue is that, how do you pay? So automatically you are his enemy. So, but you have to focus. In a turbulent period, you have to focus. You must have courage, because the kind of blackmail that will be coming, you will not know where it's coming from. From all sides. They will go and say that they are even giving you money. You know, or if they are not even giving you money, they will say he's not performing because I didn't offer him money. They must find a reason. So you must focus and be determined that you must collect it. But you must also set up a realistic target. And you must align your short-term objective with your long-term. Because if you can't plan for 5 years in Nigeria, you must plan for 2, 3, 4 years. Because the environment is very dynamic, changing every day. So you must have your short-term objective and your long-term. They must have a very, very effective handshake. And the only way you guarantee that handshake is to be sure that you have a very, very effective performance monitoring matrix, so that you know whether you are making progress or not. And you need to also be realistic, because you have obligors that cannot just pay. They are not able. They are out, completely out. So you must be realistic, even in your expectation, particularly when the times are not very good. You know, and then you must have an independent mechanism for getting your own information. Because sometimes you continue to take decisions on information that are not easily, available, it becomes a problem for you. So ladies and gentlemen, I have run up at my last bit is that please let us forget deceiving ourselves. Let us understand what kind of systems we want to operate. When we start quoting countries, let us know their antecedents. Let us know where they are coming from. Are we pursuing those angles? If we don't do that, what we are discussing today, like she said, maybe the youth population is more than 60%. I can assure you, they will discuss the same thing, because the world will not wait for us. You can send your child to the best school like all of us do, they will still come back here and meet the ones that are going to Turbulent University. They will come back here. So, and when Adam Oshomole was asking one teacher to read something, and she couldn't read, it was like a comedy for all of us, isn't it? When they are saying that a teacher cannot pass an examination that is supposed to be, it is not political. That is our future, because the future of this country is in education. Not in road, not in borehole, not in water, in education. That is only different. We had a program in Harvard University, and it was confirmed. The single most determinant factor in any progress anywhere in the world, under any circumstance, is the quality of a human capital. It's as simple as that. Nothing more, nothing less. Any stupid man can be lazy and do this hotel. But education is very, very key. The success of Singapore is because they invested heavily in human capital. They don't have one single natural resources. So we must please demand, even minimally, even if we don't want to demand for the toilet at the airport, let us demand for education. It is not easily quantifiable, and that is why it is not popular with politicians. It is not, but we must demand quality education. And thank you very much for this.
Please, another hand for This is one of the a few programs that you hate to compare, because you are there telling people to round up even when they are making important, making sense. I mean, when you finish with Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, now is your intervention. Let us now move to the next speaker. Please, we are rushing, but please, you have to bear with us, because it's not. I wish we could do this. Maureen, where are you? This your engineer, Aliyu Siki. Which one comes from?
Yes, Siki Aliyu.
Okay, Siki Aliyu.
Of the Realnews, Maureen Chipo, the organizers of this event, chairman of the occasion, and the guest lecturer just left, and of course the discussants, my fellow discussants, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the fourth realm. I'm here representing the group managing director of NMPC, engineer Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. He was unavoidably absent. He was actually meant to be here, but I got a call that he was not going to be able to make it, and I was asked to please represent him. When I tried to delegate the responsibility, I was reminded that the GMD actually hold this event very, very dear to his heart, particularly because he made very strong commitment to money, and I have to make sure I'm here personally, and that's why I'm actually here, by shifting other events that I have. But before really getting into the real details of his paper, because I would really like to share his thoughts by reading what is sent to me verbatim. But before actually getting to reading that, what Mr. Alhaji Kuru said with respect to trying to recover debts from people actually struck something in me. Somebody sent me something about 2 days ago about a lady who sells fabrics. She sold fabrics to a friend of ours or to somebody, and I think the fabric was about 100,000 naira, and she promised to pay. And after about a month, this lady hadn't paid. She called her and said, where is the money now? He said, that fabric you sold to me. By the way, the zipper came off, all sorts of things came off from it, so I'm just about to return it to you. And the lady just realized, what reminded her was that she was looking at the Facebook page and saw that this lady had taken some nice pictures with the fabric that this lady was complaining about. So she then said, okay, I need to find an innovative way of actually collecting my money. So she picked 3 eggs and painted them black, went straight to this lady's shop, and then said, look, where is this money? He said, it's only because of 100,000. I better get out of my shop and the rest of it. He said, no, I'm not going to get out of the shop. I need that money now. And she broke one of the eggs on her laps, said some funny, meaningless incantations, and then got up again and took the second egg and splashed it on her car, and then left the 3rd egg on top of the bonnet of her car, and said, if I don't get an alert for 100,000 naira and you move this car with this egg, don't blame me for whatever happens to you. So the lady left, entered the car, and drove away. Within about 30 minutes, she got a call that 50,000 naira has been paid. Can she please break the egg now so she can drive her car? So you can imagine that in Nigeria, for Nigerians, it is really true that we are not very good at honoring our debts. And these are part of the problems that we face in trying to really resolve a lot of issues. Ladies and gentlemen, the speech of my MD, of my group managing director. What you hear are his thoughts. I'm very delighted to be part of this year's Realnews Magazine online annual lecture, which holds today in Lagos. Your online medium may be only 5 years old. However, the impact I reckon it's been making in the newspaper industry is phenomenal.
I regard your reporting as responsible, balanced, fair, credible, and well-researched, underscoring your attractions to readers. I can only urge you to maintain your high standard, as this will continue to open doors for you in high places, locally and internationally. The importance of oil and gas industry to the nation's economy is well known. Suffice to say that the industry generates 95% of the country's foreign exchange and supports the industrial development and growth of the country through gas supply to power, as well as supply of white products for commercial activities. With such weighty impacts on the national economy, it goes without saying that effective leadership is sine qua non to oil and gas industry. The tempestuous scenarios and occurrences, if you like, which call for effective leadership in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria are legion. Prominent among them, however, are the recurring security challenges in the Niger Delta, which might be due to militancy activities manifesting in turn in pipeline vandalization and other facility breaches. They also include high volatility. The effectiveness of the leadership demands unique qualities and competencies from the manager. In the case of security operational challenge, the effectiveness of the manager will be tested on the extent to which he or she can cut deals, employ the stick and carrot approach, dialogue with stakeholders as well, and this support of various arms of government like the National Assembly and intelligence and of course the security agencies to his or her rescue. Similarly, in the turbulent era of low crude oil prices, the effectiveness of the manager is taxed by his or her ability to rapidly review the company's business profile with a view to reining in on the company's production costs. It also involves the manager taking proactive approach in engaging other crude oil producers to stem production, as was the case that played out late last year and early this year when crude oil prices were at the lowest. Various hits from industry watchdogs or political opponents of the ruling party who consider the National Oil Company as an extension of government depict aspects of a tempestuous actively transparent in conducting the business of the National Oil Company. It would also require the dexterity of the political leadership moderating its overbearing interference in day-to-day running of the national company. Let me contextualize this overview with regard to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC experience. The management of NNPC has been able to stay afloat in the turbulence era in the industry by employing most, if not all, the strategies enumerated above. To stem security challenges, for example, NNPC management has been engaging industry stakeholders, including the various host communities. We have also stepped up implementation of our corporate social responsibility projects in the host community while employing members of the communities to guide over 5,000 kilometers of pipeline and other facilities of the corporation across the country. It is said that, if you really want to, if you take your car somewhere and you don't want the car to be stolen, the people that are, all around the area, if you tell them to watch over the car for you, or sorry, tell them to wash your car, and then you go, you are dead sure that when you come back, you will meet your car there, because they are waiting to collect the money from you. So when you now ask the host communities to watch over the pipeline, they will definitely watch over the pipeline, and because they know if there's a breach, they don't get paid for it. So that's one of the reasons why we ask them to watch over some of those things for us. The era of price volatility is far from being enviable. The demand for forex, mainly expected from the corporation, not only attracts close marking on its activities, it also heightens constant pry into the corporation's books, not to talk of excoriation, from some of our more aggressive stakeholders. The corporation has learned to stave off attacks associated with price volatility through such strategies as proactive monthly release of NMPC operations and financial reports, which has gone a long way in securing for the corporation high ratings with regards to adherence to transparency and accountability. Also building on the corporation's initiative as a focused, accountable, competitive, and transparent organization that is conducting its business with integrity, NMPC leadership under my watch has effectively reined in on our cost elements such that despite the low price regime in the industry, we still deliver handsomely to the national covers. I presume that informed the near absence of bitter criticism from some of our traditional critics. Low crude oil prices in the international market is a function of so many factors, which may include supply glut and low economic activities of some high energy consuming nations. Providing effective leadership to navigate the era, therefore, is well beyond an individual or nation. On the contrary, it requires the ability of the various leadership personalities across the nations to collaborate and dialogue to take collective action to improve on the fortune of the industry. I want to believe this was what played out in the last 1 year with OPEC as the rallying point. The role of Nigeria in bringing about the relative stability in the crude oil price in the last few months cannot therefore be overemphasized. It will be deceptive to think that navigating the turbulent era in the oil and gas industry starts and ends with providing effective leadership alone. Responsible followership, I reckon, could also be part of the solution, if not the panacea. Exhibiting civilized behaviors such as shunning engagements in willful destruction of industry assets could lower frayed nerves and enable smooth operational activities. Similarly, preference for dialogue as against militancy will augur well much more for the sectors. These are attitudes and approaches that are within the followership. In the same vein, given the power of the media, responsive reportage of industry activities as against sensationalism is critical towards ensuring stability in the turbulent period in the oil and gas industry. It is my hope that all hands will be on deck to ensure enduring stability in the oil and gas sector, as it is through this that government will generate the much needed funds to run the system. I thank the management of Realnews Magazine and Publications Limited for creating this platform aimed at finding solutions to challenges which, when overcome, will ensure an upliftment of the standard of living of our people. It is my prayer that your medium continues to wax stronger. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Please, on the other hand, I'm so sorry for again, we are having to really rush our speakers out of the lectern, but you know what it is, that who thinks he started as a fair pusher, now he's pushing money. Back to me.
Yeah, good afternoon. I want to start on existing protocol and of course pay my compliments to my brothers. Wow. I'm sharing this panel today. The MD of AMCON and the MD of the subsidiary, as well of course our general who we all revere. When we grow up, we want to be like him, our role model. Well, mine is to just relate the back experience with what we've been listening to all along. Madam Oby Ezekwesili talked about using strong, competent, and capable people who have capacity to build institutions. And then institutions will outlive those individuals and be able to deliver effectively on their mandates and make effective contributions to national development. I bear witness that Bank of Industry in the last 16 years stands out as a Nigerian institution that has been restructured by very competent, efficient, and capable Nigerian leaders. The MD of AMCON was describing the business environment last year, 2016 in particular. According to the Central Bank FSS report, because of the recession, the non-performing loans went up to 14%, which is above the CBN threshold of 5%. And many banks had it very rough. However, that year has gone down in history as the Bank of Industry's most successful year in operation. Because in 2016, we recorded highly impressive returns, double digit in some instances. We're a development finance institution. Most DFIs in Africa and in the country operate at losses. They are loss-making institutions. But last year, we recorded a 42% increase in our profits, operating profits, from 11 billion in 2015 to 17 billion in 2016. And then regarding our mandate, which is developmental impact, our total loans went up by 10% from 151 billion to 176 billion to about 800 enterprises that have potential for generating about 1,000 jobs, 1 million jobs, I beg your pardon. So these are developmental impact. And then in terms of sectors, our loans to small and medium enterprises also went up by 42% annually from 55.6 billion in 2015 to 8 billion in 2016. Now, I mentioned these figures. I want to let you know that the journey to 2016 did not just start in a day. The Bank of Industry came into existence in the form which it is today in 2001, when it was reconstructed from the erstwhile Nigerian Industrial Development Bank that was incorporated in 1958 as ICON Limited, but was reconstructed into NIDB in 1959 as ICON, but was reconstructed into NIDB in 1964. So in this period of time, up to 2001, NIDB was mainly a loss-making institution. Due to the reconstruction that took place under the Obasanjo administration, it started with the process of appointing the leaders. Obasanjo felt that he wanted the best human being to run the bank industry. He said if it meant recruiting an expatriate, he was ready to do so. In other words, going back to 1964, when NIDB was established, with the support of International Finance Corporation, a staff of IFC called James Raj was the first chief executive of NIDB. However, he didn't get to that. An advert was placed, and Nigerians applied. They were interviewed, and Dr. Lawrence Osafiana came first at the interview, and he was given the job. He ran the bank for about 4.5 years, 2001 August to 2005 December, when Ms. Evelyn Okutu was appointed the managing director, and she ran the bank between 2005 December and April 2014. And then in 2014, I acted as managing director for 2 months. Rashid Ololuwa was eventually appointed managing director. He was MD until February 2016, and I again had the responsibility of running the bank from February 2016 to May 2017. So over this period of time, all the chief executives made phenomenal contributions to the bank, and each of them left the bank stronger than they met it. Many of you covered the bank of industry, and you reported on this performance. What is clear is that it is possible in our lifetime as Nigerians to take the bull by the horn if and when we decide to. If we could do it in BOI, that means it can be done in many other institutions. What we need are many BOIs across the country in terms of state-owned enterprises. The methodology and the BOI model is what should be adopted in other state-owned enterprises. It's majority owned by government, but in terms of operation, it's been private sector driven, and we benchmark ourselves in terms of global standards, international best practices. Today, the Bank of Industry is the best rated, according to Fitch, is the best rated Nigerian bank, wholly owned by Nigerians and managed by Nigerians. The rating is AA+. It's only one commercial bank that has a triple according to Fitch, and that commercial bank has foreign owners, and some foreigners are also involved in the management of that commercial bank. We're also rated AA1 by Moody's, and also AA- by Agusto. So if a Nigerian-owned institution owned 59% by the Ministry of Finance and 40% Central Bank, and then 42 other minority Nigerian shareholders, can transform a state-owned enterprise into one of the best on the African continent, all hope is not lost for us in this country. As we heard, and like my brother Akuru said, leadership, particularly in Nigeria, can be a very, very challenging role. One thing none of them have mentioned up to now is that our leaders need prayers. Yes, I've had the opportunity or privilege of working with 6 managing directors closely. The last 2 managing directors of NIDB, Malam Ibrahim Ali, who employed me in 1990, he left in 91. Then Alhaji Seydou Kassim took over in 1991 and ran the bank for 10 years. He left in 2001. Then of course I mentioned their successors in BOI. Masafiana, Uputu, Rashid Ololuwa, and then now we have Mr. Kali Kuto. So Mr. Kuto is the 6th MD I'm working with. And I can tell you that leadership can be very daunting. And unless you are close to God and you believe in God, not just as a Muslim praying 5 times a day, that's a physical activity, or a Christian go to mass every day, that's a physical activity. Your faith is very important. because it guides your thought process. It guides what you say. It guides your actions. And it will also guide your reactions. So, when you talk of management, basic functions, staffing is very important for an organization. So, in taking your decision regarding staffing, whether you believe in God or you fear God, will manifested in your staffing process. How you determine those who work with you, how you motivate them, how you inspire them, how you organize them, which is also one of the key focus of management. Then, of course, planning. What are the objectives? Every organization has a reason for existence. What's the vision of the organization? What's the mission? What's the mandate? How you go about your activities on a daily basis. You need divine ideas. You don't know misled. Because I've been there twice. And mine, I can't say funny, but unique. In the sense that having studied MDs, then you are asked to act the first time. I knew how people related to me when I acted the first time. And I knew how they related to when I left and Rashid came. I knew how they tried to mislead Rashid as they tried to mislead previous MDs. So it takes the grace of God for you to know that these people are trying to mislead you. If you are not close to God, you will not know. God will pretend to you that they are the best human beings, they are angels. And portray those who will help you as villains. It takes the grace of God for you to know. Then when Rashid left, I knew how those who are close to him started vilifying him. And then I took over from Rashid. And then they came back to me again. And they said, well, yeah, okay. So that's why I said, it takes the grace of God for somebody to pass through the roles I went through and to play those roles. They say, hey, remember, Rashid did that thing to you. These are his people. Start dealing with them, now that he has gone. Yes. Is that what God has to do? As you can imagine. Of course, I'm not misguided, I'm not misled by anybody. But it's very, very easy for leaders in this environment to mislead. Oh, yes, we should do for that person. Now that she has gone, let's deal with the person. No. If you are not close to God, they are likely to pander to such people. So it's very, very, very important. What you studied in school is important. You must have capacity, you must have competence, you must have ability, you must have all those features that they've all described. But what shapes the character, which Dr. Oby Ezekwesili said is very important, not the most important, is also your faith. And just like my brother said, you know that this credit is bad, is 2 billion, and you are going to book it. You say yes, after some years, it will provide it for. How? If you are a godly person, you do such a thing. Some people are criminals. Criminals are not godly people. So it's very, very important for our leaders to be competent, for them to have capacity, for them to be technically sound, for them to be able to communicate their vision. Because that's an aspect that we've also not touched on. Communication is one of the most important functions of management, but which we downplay in this environment critically. I've been there, so I know. Then as a leader, how do you motivate and inspire your staff if you cannot communicate with them effectively? Because as a leader, you must exude confidence for you to be able to inspire confidence of the followership. And these are very, very important for a leader to succeed. We'll spend a lot of time here today. I want to thank Maureen Chigo for inviting me to speak here. We have a great country. Not many countries are as blessed as Nigeria. It's not too late if we all decide today to be effective leaders in our respective assignments, in our respective, but the president cannot be everywhere. The minister cannot be everywhere. The governor cannot be everywhere. The MP cannot be everywhere. You have to walk through people. So all of us must collectively decide that we want to make Nigeria a great country. And one thing I keep asking myself and my colleagues or people around is that, do we want our children to pray for us or to curse us? It's very important. Because when we are no more around and our children start reminiscing, these are our parents. Why did they bequeath kind of legacy to us? They read in history books that Nigeria used to be a very rich country. But our parents plundered our resources. They did not plan for us. They didn't do this. Then they were costing us wherever we are. So we be conscious of our place in history, whatever we do. So, thank you very much.
Please, another hand for our brother, colleague and friend, Wabi. I told you, when you start with the pen and the microphone and end up counting money, that is what you get. But, Mori, you didn't tell me that Realnews got the motto of its operation, for God and for humanity, partly from BOI. You can see the link. We cannot do anything without God. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me, and in that regard, let me call on those that will give. In fact, everybody, I know you will have something good to say about Maureen, Realnews, and this occasion. But just allow two people to say them for us. And that is why I'm calling. First will be a representative of.
My name is Shola Adebao. I'm the manager of communications for Chevron's business in Nigeria. But today I represent the general manager, policy development and public affairs for the company, Mr. Isimaja Briki. That's the correct pronunciation of his name. He gave me a speech to read, but it's been a long day, so I'll just paraphrase. I'll use 2 minutes. Okay, used 1. I'll use 2. On behalf of the NNPC Chevron joint venture, I congratulate Realnews on the 5th anniversary lecture, which has been a consistent platform for contributing to key issues and national discourse. What has been said today from the main speaker to all the other contributors has led towards one direction of the need for a paradigm shift in leadership. As it is for national government, so it is for private businesses and indeed corporate organizations. For us in Chevron Nigeria Limited, we realized this in particular in 2005, when the issues in our social environment in the Niger Delta assumed a dimension that required creative response to the social realities around us. And in doing that, we decided to evolve a new way of interacting with our neighbors. And we evolved a participatory process where the process of development is taken away from contributors to the beneficiaries. And we call that a global memorandum of understanding. What we did with that is to make sure that the social contributions we make as form of social investment is no longer a handout. It's now the determination of the owner of the communities around us getting involved in our business and determining what path they want to take in terms of their own development. And we stay to help them get there. This major change has made dramatic difference in how business operations has gone. In our own experience, intercompany community conflict has reduced significantly. The cases of disruption has reduced significantly. And this points to one thing, that when people participate in a process, they own it. And when they own it, there is less conflict. And when there is less conflict, everybody prospers. And if I may say, within the last 12 years that this process has occurred, we have spent over 19.9 billion naira in investment in infrastructure in the areas of education, health, economic development, and various other things. And also in our contributions in the area of multiple partners in deep water operations, we continue to make contributions around the country. As we speak today, over 25 chess clinics have been contributed in 25 states of the country, including places where we have no business operation at all. Now, where there is peace, everybody benefits. And this is why it is very critical for us as operators to think about what changes we can make. And in Chevron, we recommend this process, that when you make your neighbors participants in your business, there is a multiplier effect. There is a multiplier, there's a symbiosis of goodwill that translates to prosperity for all. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we want to once again appreciate Realnews on this occasion. Let me also say that what we propose today is key for every business. Everyone who invests in Nigeria, as you look for human capital, also make sure that you pay attention to social investment, because if your neighbors are happy, your business will prosper. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for him. Now, you all agree that I've had a very hectic day. I've been participating in this anniversary, and I've never seen it lasted this long, with people stay keen on listening. Another big round of applause. Thank you so much. From now on, sir, we've been talking about global leadership. Global leadership. Now, who will tell me, who is a bigger global leader here than General Martin Luther Agwai? Probably you don't know his pedigree. He was the chief of army staff of Nigerian Army, well-trained, commander-in-chief of ECOMOG Army. Later, he became a UN commander of, I don't know how to pronounce it. Agwai has seen it all. And we must ask you to give us one or two words of presentation. General, sir.
Having had a very long day, it will be difficult, but I thank the chairman for the opportunity, and I thank all of you who have been patient enough to wait. When the MC came and asked me to make one or two remarks, I found it difficult, but I said I came here invited just like every other guest, but thanks for the honor and thanks for the privilege. I want to say that I first met Maureen not in Nigeria, but outside this country. And during our discussion, I found that she's a wonderful lady. And then when we started communicating, I have found what most people have said here to be true, that if she wants something, she doesn't sleep. She will keep reminding you. At one point, the number of emails and phone calls that were coming, I said, I have given you my word as an old soldier and a gentleman that I'm coming and I will come. Thank you for the number of people you have brought. And also, I'm sure most of us have enjoyed what the keynote speaker and other speakers have said, especially the wonderful introduction by the chairman of the occasion itself. We have talked about Turbulent, and being an old soldier and having spent 5 of my service years with the United Nations in peacekeeping and sometimes peace enforcement, I begin to understand when people talk about turbulent environment. But what most of us fail to realize is that this turbulent environment is actually created by us. Yes. Because we fail to do basic things, especially what the keynote speaker talked about, the rule of law and good governance. I'm happy that we are all, we're living here, I believe, best informed. But I want to leave us parents with a word of advice that it's good to build a future for your children. But honestly, I do not believe that it is our responsibility as parents that we must build houses and buy cars for our children. Yes. What do you want them to do? If you don't set up a challenge, then what do you want them to use their energy for? I remember when I was younger, I keep praying that one day I will own a bicycle. And when I bought my first bicycle in 1965, no, sorry, pardon me. I bought my first bicycle in 1968. Correct. From my own salary. I was the happiest man before even I got a car. So it's important we allow our children to grow to face the challenges of time. And then, another thing we are very good at this country is our own. This is our turn. The turn belongs to all of us. It's just by accident of birth that you were born in one place. But if you are in position of leadership, you are to exercise it for the people and not for a segment of the society. Finally, I know it's been a long day. I want to say, when we talk about leadership, most of us always look at the top. If you are in the military, you start looking at your service chief, you start looking at your chief of defense staff or minister of defense. But I'll fall back to my constituency that I spent 40 years wearing military uniform. That you have company commander, you have section commander, you have company commander, who is answerable to a battalion commander, who is answerable to a brigade commander. What am I trying to say? That at every level there is leadership. And if the chain of leadership fell from the bottom, there is nothing up can do. So all of us at our level should exercise that leadership. And what I define as leadership is ability to influence others to do the right thing. Anywhere you are, when you are living, ask yourself, have you made that place better than you found it? If not, something is wrong. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these are words of an old soldier. It will not make any sense, don't worry. Finally, I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank Maureen for the avenue of giving us information, because it helps leaders to make informed decisions, and not just decisions for the sake of decisions, but based on facts and figures. So thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Please, we want you to come. You see that you're feeling somehow. Please join him on this item. We will tell you why.
Thank you. You now see a soldier's life. Let me tell you the truth. I know General Abai. I've been to his 4 hamlets in southern Kaduna years back. After he had become the Grand Chief of Army Staff, you wouldn't believe it, that General Martin Abai had not erected a bungalow. He was so Okay, one more time. There's big, good, sumptuous food out there. I'm now going to proceed.
On behalf of Realnews, we want to thank you for your time, and very strange, not very many places in Nigeria that when people go to cheer occasion, they go with their wives. Madam, we thank you very much for all the support, and we thank you for all your patience. When virtually everybody speaks and run away, when you finish speaking, you start and listen. Thank you so much, sir. We thank you for adding color to this occasion. Thank you.
Round of applause.
This opportunity to exchange views about African leadership in the foreign environment. I wish you all safe feedback, and during the lunch you can ask comments, you can ask questions, we can discuss on the sideline. Once again, thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Vote of thanks. And I would very much like to start with Nella, because she will tell her story.
About oil, they also pray there to give us the closing prayer. Isabella. I thank Realnews magazine management for giving me the opportunity to say the prayer. I also rely on the software of this program started in the morning. This afternoon around the clock. During the period, everything went on well. I believe it is the blessing of the Almighty God that made it so. So I commit all of us who are here, those who have left us, in the hands of the Almighty Allah, that God enable each and every one of us to reach our respective destination safe and sound, and that our country on which the lecture was held will in future prosper with all our citizenry happy with the nation. I thank you for the opportunity. I also would like to Sheraton Hotels, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.